Hey, this is Jill Simonello with Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and today we are here with the 2022 Hyundai IONIQ 5. Now, because the IONIQ 5 is an all-electric vehicle, I think that this review has to start with the discussion of range. So you're going to have two different ranges, and that's because this comes as a rear-wheel drive vehicle standard, but then all-wheel drive is available. So rear-wheel drive, single motor, range is going to be higher. The all-wheel drive has a dual motor powering front and rear wheels, and range is going to be lower. So rear-wheel drive models will get 303 miles of range, and the all-wheel drive models will get 256 miles of range. Yay for the more than 300 miles of range. I don't know. I'm still not sure how I feel about the 250 miles of range thing. So, but that's what you've got. However, the good news is, with the dual motor, that means more power. So all-wheel drive vehicles are going to have 320 horsepower and 446 pound-feet of torque. And that is a significant increase over your rear-wheel drive models. You go for the more range, you're looking at 225 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. So in my mind, it's kind of a trade-off. Range versus power. I'm hoping for a day where there will not be a trade-off, but that's where we are. All right, I do need to issue a little bit of a note now that we've talked about range and power. I don't have pricing information while I am filming this video. So it will be out by the time the video is posted. So my Vanna White editor will be posting the actual pricing, but I can't say the words because it's not out yet. Now that we've got that out of the way, I just want to do a quick walk around of the exterior and interior of the vehicle. If you have seen anything from Hyundai in the past year, some of the design elements here are not going to look unfamiliar to you. So we have what I like to call the Zorro slash here, but Hyundai calls it parametric design elements. So you do have that going on, but a big thing you are going to notice on the IONIQ 5 is going to be some pixelated design. So basically what they mean by that, and you can't really see it here because of the reflection, is there's a lot of little squares. So we'll look here. So you've got little squares here, you've got the little squares there, and though you can't see it because it's very reflective, there's little squares in this knot grille. But basically that's a recurring design theme throughout the vehicle. And as you go around, you see it here on the side mirror, and you move around to the back, and you have it here again on the taillights and blinker area. And then when you move inside, you are going to notice it again. So here on the seats, here in the perforated pattern, and here on the steering wheel. I know when I did some TikTok videos, people asked what the point of this was, why not put a Hyundai logo there? And frankly, I don't know why they didn't put a Hyundai logo there, but this fits in with the rest of the design theme of the vehicle, considering all of the little square element designs. And again, you have it here, but you will basically see that everywhere. All right, since we have the door open, let's step inside and power it up. So it doesn't really have any kind of a startup graphic or anything like that, but you did hear the chimes, and it does have that little thing that pops up there that tells you, hey, by the way, I am ready to drive, because what you do not hear is no engine. Yeah, you need that to say, okay, is the car on? Is it not on? Is it off? And again, once the big symbol over here goes away, it moves over there. It lets you know that it's ready to drive. So you've got a couple of 12.3 inch screens. So this is 12.3 inches for the digital cluster. This is 12.3 inches for the infotainment screen. And I think they work pretty well together. You know, it's not one clear piece of glass, but I think it looks good. It works. I mean, this covers that. So I don't need it to be one piece of glass. But mostly a very clean looking design. And again, pretty minimalistic. This is the up-level limited trim, so it has the panoramic moonroof, but minimalistic design that just generally looks fairly attractive. But what that means is not too many hard controls here. So most of your controls are going to be in the digital display. You know, for example, if you go to climate, then you know, your climate controls pop up. So you don't control your climate necessarily here. I mean, you can do a little bit of the warmer, colder, but to get a more precise climate control, you have to hit the climate button and go through here. So you do have a little bit of redundancy, but not much. Also, this does have heated seats, but no hard control for the heated seats. You have to hit the warmer button, and then you get, you know, your heated steering wheel and heated seat buttons. So, I don't know. I kind of think this might fall on my do not like list, but I'm a little bit undecided. So again, a lot of your controls are going to be done through this digital cluster. And I will say, so here you got your home button. If you are familiar with Hyundai and Kia vehicles, a lot of this stuff will look fairly familiar to you, because this is similar to what the Hyundai Kia home screen is now, and then you have your menu items. It's just this is white instead of black, and I don't know, maybe that's something that you can change in the system settings, but it's brighter and lighter and white instead of black, which is what you would see in those vehicles. But this shouldn't be unfamiliar to you, and so a lot of the controls and things in the settings menus are going to work the way it does in those vehicles. Let's take a quick look at the back seat before we move on to a couple of other EV things I want to talk about. Keeping with the more minimalist design theme going on, there's not a lot going on back here. And frankly, I haven't really decided if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet. You do have a decent amount of leg room and knee room. So I would say probably about 8 inches here between my knee and the back of the seat. And this seat is in the far forward position, or the far back position. Sorry, my seat is in the far forward position. And you have the center console that this actually moves forward and backwards. We'll talk about that on my like list. But you have USB charge ports back here. You don't have heated seats. You don't have climate controls, but you do have an air vent. So at least you have an air vent and you have sunshades, but otherwise you really don't have too much going on back here other than some good legroom and a way to charge. And again, you come to my side of the vehicle and oh, that's actually funny. My feet aren't even touching the back of my seat. So I have limo-like legroom behind my driving position. But yeah, that's the back seat of the Hyundai IONIQ. Okay, I want to interrupt this review with a quick word on range. So we just drove probably about 40 miles, and I'm in the all-wheel drive IONIQ 5, which has a range of just more than 250 miles. And yeah, you can see that math doesn't really add up very well. I went about 40 miles and, well, 46 to be exact, and literally burned twice as much in the range. So I burned through 90 miles of range in 46 miles. Now, I was going highway speeds, and the speed limit was 70, so I set it at 79. So I was going highway speeds, so I wasn't going slow. I wasn't using regenerative braking, but yeah, that actually makes me a little nervous, because if you are going to plan a road trip from Chicago to Indy and you think you have 300 miles of range, is that really only 150 miles of range? Because that is not enough to get me from Chicago to Indy. So I'll see if I can ask some questions and get somebody to talk about this, but that is the first thing that I want to point out that kind of bothers me about this vehicle. Just want to do another range check-in. I've now gone another 25.7 miles, and I am at 137 miles of range. Now, when last we looked at this, I was at about 169 miles of range. So this makes me feel a little better, but I'm going to point out I turned on the iPedal system. So when you hit this tab right here, it basically puts the car in a mode for one pedal driving and gives you stiffer regenerative braking. I also was not on the highway. I was on twisty bits with a speed limit of about 55 miles an hour, and yeah, I got stuck behind somebody doing like 35 for most of the drive. So I anticipate that has a lot to do with the range here, but this makes me feel a little bit better, and I still don't think I'd be able to make it from Chicago to Indianapolis at highway speeds, but surface street city driving, I think the range is, you know, pretty much as advertised. All right, I just wanted to do one final check-in on range because I think that was probably the longest stretch there that I was going to do before the end of the drive. And we started out about 136 miles of range, and we've ended up with 83 miles of range, but we went 71 miles. And again, if you do the math, that doesn't add up, but this time in a good way. I will point out that on the way back, we were going basically down the mountain, so my average miles per kilowatt hours went up, and therefore I was able to exceed the range expectations. So it's hit or miss. Still don't think I'm going to be able to make it to Indianapolis on a single charge, but yeah, better than I thought it would be. Since we talked about range, let's take a quick look at the fast charging. Okay, so this vehicle was clearly at about 10% of range when it plugged in. It's at 17 minutes. It has 1 minute left until it's at 80%. That's right, you can go from 10% to 80% charge in 18 minutes. And this is through an Electrify America 800 volt charger. And you know, we're here, we're plugged in, and yeah, that's pretty cool. It takes you 18 minutes, so that's enough time to run in to get some coffee or to recline in your rest seat in the front. But yeah, woohoo, we just hit 80%. That is pretty cool. So the other thing that you should know, so you're plugged in, on the front, you actually have a charge indicator. So you've got to be looking at this the right way. But since we've reached 80%, all 5 of those little squares are lit. When you're at 10%, you'll only have 1 little square lit, and then as it continues to charge, this builds. So that's where your charge indicator is, and yeah, this vehicle is up to 80% and ready to go. I will point out that Hyundai has a partnership with Electrify America, so even though this says $18.92, it doesn't actually cost that because you get a trial period of free charging for 30-minute sessions, unlimited, for a couple of years. So, it says $18.92, didn't actually cost $18.92, it's free. All right, it is the point in the review where I talk about the things that I like and I don't like on this vehicle, and there's actually quite a few of both. So I'm going to limit it to my 5 favorite things and then the 5 things that bother me the most. So let's start with this area right here. You have an open space where you can put a bag, a purse, a diaper bag, groceries, takeaway, something here. So you don't have to set it on the seat, and I really like that. That is a big plus for this vehicle because you don't have to figure out where you're going to put stuff if you need to reach it. So, thumbs up. So along with that, another thing that I really like is going to be the fact that this center console moves forward and backward. So if you don't need as much space here, you can move it forward. You have access to the armrest, the cup holders are still here, and you have a nice big space right here. So another place to put your purse, bag, a briefcase, something not as big, but also excellent storage space, but you still have a little space right here where you can store your wallet, phone, whatever, and hide it from view when you're going inside of a store. So if you don't need it, you move it back and voila, more space. So I'm gonna say this right here is like 2 things that make my like list. Now another thing that I really like, and it's hard to film and you can't really see it, is the head-up display. It's very adjustable, it goes up and down, and it's right in your line of sight, and it has a lot of information on it. So in addition to the speed that you're traveling, it also has navigational directionals. And so like if you're getting ready to turn, instead of doing like a little arrow to turn, it actually moves, and it's like, basically, don't forget, you need to go this way right now. And that looks really cool. It lets you know when vehicles are in front of you, and it just has a nice amount of clarity, and it's very adjustable. So you can move it up, you can move it down, you can move it sideways, and you can get it perfectly adjusted for your driving position, and I really like that. Another cool thing about the Hyundai IONIQ 5 is going to be the ambient lighting, and it's just dark enough to be able to get a glimpse of what it will look like on this vehicle. But what I really like about it is the fact that you can change the colors, and in fact, you can customize your color if you want. So you have a color wheel here, and all you have to do is tap on the area of where you would like it to be, and then you have just set your own color. So it shows up around the speakers here, it shows up on the armrest there, and when you go to the back seat, it shows up on the armrest and the speakers there as well. Now, the last two things on my like list are going to have to do with driving characteristics. So the first thing is going to be the fact that I really like the one-pedal driving system. And you have the ability to go from one-pedal driving, so complete one-pedal regenerative, take your foot off the gas, the vehicle slows down all the way to a stop, and you can then walk it back from there from different levels of regenerative braking and the engine braking, as some might call it. People who are familiar with a manual transmission, and you downshift and you get the stronger braking, it's kind of like that. So level 3, really strong engine braking. Level 2, not so much. Level 1, a little bit less. And then 0, it's going to be driving very much like a normal gasoline-powered vehicle. So somebody who's new to an electric vehicle might start there and then work their way up so they can get used to the idea of one-pedal driving. I really love the one-pedal driving on this vehicle. We were in a whole bunch of twisty bits, and I didn't touch the gas pedal once. Once I got the hang of the release point and how quickly the vehicle would slow down, all I did is just modulated my speed by pressing the accelerator pedal. So I thought that was really super cool, and I love it. And once I engaged the one-pedal driving, I'm going to point out my ability to retain the charge longer also went up. I mean, it didn't hurt that I wasn't driving on the highway, but I really like that as well. So the final thing that I like also has to do with those twisty bits I was in. This is a really solid planted vehicle that handles itself incredibly well. So whether you're on the highway and you're making a straight shot to wherever it is you're going, or you want to, I know, sound effects, this can do that too. So overall, a lot of cool features, but those are going to be the top 5 things that I really like on this vehicle. Now I'm going to transition into the things that I don't like, and let's start with my driving position. And it's not that I hate it, it's just not ideal. And part of that is because the seat, in order to be able to see over the dash, I've got my seat in a far up position. However, the seat bottom also kind of tilts up, which means my feet don't touch the floor. They kind of dangle. So as I'm driving, I can't push the seat bottom down, like the front tilt of the seat. So I put my foot on the accelerator pedal and my heel isn't touching the ground. So for the couple of hours that I was driving, not a big deal, but I could see, like, over a longer period of time, that would get very annoying. I mean, and the other thing is, like, when I was using the smart cruise control, again, like, what do you do with your feet? Like, I can barely reach the dead pedal, and my other foot is just kind of dangling like a limp fish. So for me, as a petite person, I'm 5 feet tall, the driving position isn't ideal. Not sure yet if it's a deal breaker. I would have to let you know down the road when I have this for a week-long test, and that'll give me a better idea how I feel about this. Now, another thing that I don't like is the lack of a hard button for your heated seat. Now, there are some redundant climate controls going on, but there's no heated seat button. Instead, you have to hit a button that says warmer, then you get a screen that pops up and you can then turn your heated seats on or, you know, turn it down. And, ooh, you've even got cooled seats, so I guess that's a plus. But it's not a simple one-touch operation. It also has your steering wheel heat button in there as well. So no hard button for your heated seats. And, okay, it's only, you know, warmer and then you got it. But to me, that's not what I want. I want a hard button for my heated seats because I'll be honest with you, I turn them on every day, all the time, no matter what. Another thing that I don't like is going to be this right here. So this is going to be the third thing on my list. In order to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, right now, you have to wire in. Hyundai says they're working on it, but they haven't created a fix for it just yet. So you have to wire in and then you've got a cord. The good news is they have a little cubby right below the charge port. So if you are wired in, you can just put your phone down there and leave it. But at the end of the day, I still really just want it all to be wireless, especially because this does in fact have a wireless charging pad. Now, another thing that I noticed while I was driving, so this is going to be number 4 on my list, and probably not a deal breaker because it's probably something that I would get used to over time, is this right here. This is your gear shift. This is not your gear shift. This is actually your windshield wiper. And very often when I was getting in and out of the car or having to shift or do something, I grabbed the wiper first and then I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted. I need this right here. So in the short amount of time, again, 2 hours, first drive look at this vehicle, I didn't quite get used to the placement of the gear shift versus the windshield wiper and kept confusing the two. So not a huge deal, but hopefully it's something I would get used to over time, but not today. Today I did not. And the final thing that I don't like that could potentially be a problem is the range drop. I went through and did some check-ins on range from when we went out and then on our way back. And on the way back, I did better, but on the way out, I used twice as much range as the mileage that I drove. So I drove 45 miles and used about 90 miles of range. And that to me is a little bit creative of heart palpitations. Like, that is going to stress me out in a week-long test. And if I were owning the car, I mean, that would just really stress me out. Now, I will point out, on the way back, downhill, I actually did better. So maybe it evens out in the end, but right now, this is just a little bit unclear. I guess unclear is the right word for me on what the range actually is. They say it's 256 on the all-wheel drive models, but I clearly did not get that, and I basically got half of that. So if I were going to drive 256 miles, I would have to stop and charge, especially if I were doing highway driving. So I really hate the fact that they do these range tests basically in a vacuum at like 55 miles an hour or whatever, and that's not how people actually drive. So for me, while I like the range and living in Chicago, I would have no problem with this vehicle, but if I wanted to drive to Indianapolis, as I mentioned previously, I don't think I could do it, and I wouldn't feel comfortable taking this vehicle down there to test it out. I'd be able to drive to Milwaukee and back, but Indianapolis, not so much. So that rounds out my do not like list. All right, I am losing my light, so clearly it is time for me to wrap up this review. And in terms of closing thoughts, I just want to say I really like the IONIQ 5. A first look drive is really hard because you see so much and have so little time to get used to a vehicle. And what I want to say is, even though I was disappointed in the range, I don't know that that is the actual range that I'm going to get. I like the way it looks on paper, and when I get this for a week-long test, I think I'll have a better idea of what the range can actually be and what the range actually does, and maybe I'll talk Hyundai into letting me actually try to drive to Indianapolis, and we'll see what happens. But overall, really like the IONIQ 5. I like how quiet it is. The Bose audio system is really good. Love the movable console. Love the technology. Love the way it looks. Love the way it drives. So in general, for a first look review, I'm giving this 2 thumbs up. So thanks for watching, and I will see you down the road.